yeah, I mean, on paper, it's looking like, in my opinion, the greatest card this year. At least on name value and rankings and notable names and just interesting fights. I mean, you can make an argument for, some previous, like 308. You can make an argument for some previous pay-per-views, even 300. But I mean, I think 310 is actually super underrated. I know that there has been a few people that have been saying it's underrated. So at this point, it's not the most underrated, but I am incredibly interested in this card, and let's get into it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And starting with Kennedy Nezuchukwu versus Lucas Budersky. Now this one, I mean, Kennedy, he looked great against Chris Barnett. I saw MMA Guru's live stream and his chat. It was hilarious during the UFC 308 fight companion. And yeah, Kennedy, he looked great in that one. And we look at Lucas Bursky, and it's a KO, KO, and then two decisions. But I mean, let's be honest, not looking great. And aside from his height and reach, I don't see this being a whole lot different than the Chris Barnett fight. I see Kennedy Nezuchukwu basically just picking apart Lucas Bursky, and I think round two TKO makes sense. Um, I understand that Kennedy hasn't looked great as of late in light heavyweight, but he's now moving up to heavyweight, and he's going to prove that most light heavyweights should move up to heavyweight. Because even though Lucas Brisky isn't really a fat blob heavyweight, he's definitely not the most skilled. So it's going to be a pretty confident Nizuchukwu pick. Yeah, I'm surprised that he's fighting again so soon, accepting a short notice fight as well. And we have Chase Hooper versus Clay Guida. I mean, yeah, I would assume that Chase Hooper gets a submission here. I mean, even though Clay Guida hasn't really been subbed as of late, Chase Hooper is just such a calm and collected grappler, and his jiu-jitsu is great. Lucas Tracy is sort of comparing him to Charles Oliveira, and I see that honestly. Although in the striking, it's not all there. Yes, you dropped Vyacheslav Borishev, but he isn't like a well-established striker. Like he's good, but he had a split decision against a guy who's not that good in his last fight. So Vyacheslav Borishev, he's he's good, but he's not that good. Um, so I wouldn't really say his striking is all there yet, but he did drop Borshev, so that's good. But Chase Hooper's element is going to be in the grappling here. We know that. He does have quite a few subs and a couple TKOs, right? Um, a few decisions, and yeah, ultimately, I think that Clay Guida is going to do good in the first round. He's going to keep high pace as he normally does, like against Joaquim Silva. In that one, he was a really close one because stylistically, it was hard for Joaquim Silva to find his shots or his counters because he's mostly more patient and slow, and Clay Guida was bouncy and able to get in and out of the pocket enough to not make it too dominant for Joaquim Silva. And yeah, even opponents before what's his name, Borshev, even opponents before Vyacheslav Borshev, like um, okay, how am I forgetting this? I gotta check here. Jordan Levitt, I wasn't gonna get that. I knew the name, but it wasn't coming in my memory. Like these are good grapplers. So Chase Hooper, I feel like he's gonna probably be patient, kind of like Charles, although actually Charles is aggressive, but lately he's been quite patient. And I think he's going to get maybe around three submission, maybe around three. And moving on, surprised he's such a huge favorite. Like, yeah, he's clearly going to be Clay Guida, but I don't know about minus 770. Um, yeah, I think Michael Chiesa, even though it's the dead body Tony Ferguson, uh, okay, maybe not the dead body Tony Ferguson, but he's clearly nowhere near his prime, obviously. But I think that getting the first round sub, yeah, it was what he was supposed to go out there and do, Michael Chiesa, but he he did it with a pretty impressive game. You know, he didn't really face much adversity. He is honestly, you know, like he's younger. He has a slight reach advantage, decent reach, decent height advantage, I should say, and the reach is pretty much even, practically even. And you go back to Max Griffin, like split, unanimous, sure, but I mean, who? Okay, yeah, fair enough. That's not too bad of a loss. But then, you know, split to Tim Means and then Neil Magny split. Like, yeah, I feel like Michael Chiesa is a pretty good underdog here. And I know that most of Tapology's picking Michael Chiesa as an underdog, so I don't know, but I mean, I think that Michael Chiesa could get like a round two sub. I could see this. Um, because Max Griffin, like, I've seen a lot of his fights, but it's just that, you know, they don't really come to memory because he's just such an NPC in most of the mixed martial arts games. So it's just like I got to go with the guy who's had finishes lately. And so I know that that's kind of like a basic commentary, not very in depth, but it's just like Michael Chiesa did what he had to do with Tony Ferguson, and Max Griffin, when he has a guy like Tim Means who's not that good, especially at this point, you know, he ends up like going to a split decision. It's just and then Jeremiah Wells and Carlos Condit, like Carlos Condit was out of his prime, I'm pretty sure, and that was not like a complete shutout. Like yeah, he won, but I feel like he's not looking how he should. He's not impressing. So yeah, round two sub there. A good underdog. And then this one I also think's a good underdog, but I think I'm still gonna go with Joshua Van. Cody Durden and Joshua Van. Yeah, I think that Joshua Van. It's gonna take one of these longer, rangier guys to really, really finish him. We saw against Charles Johnson that you know, these guys that have the longer physique, the longer reach, the longer height, all that, it's those guys who pose problems and who can't actually find their shots because it's hard for Joshua Van to enter in the range on those guys because he is a small flyweight and that's quite difficult for him considering that he is a you know that he is in the smallest weight class so it's not like he could go even lower. It's just a unfortunate situation for him. And, you know, even in the fight that he won against, let me just double check this, um, Edgar Chairez, you see, like Jordan Levitt, some of these names, it's just like, I know these names, I do, but they just kind of dissipate from my memory or disappear from my memory. And yeah, it's just, yeah, some of these guys, like, well, it's a huge roster, you know, like 600 or so fighters, 700. So some of these guys are just find it hard to remember, but Joshua Van, yeah, I mean, even against Morales or Shires, Morales, Edgar Shires, um, he was finding shots and he almost finished Joshua Van at one moment. I believe he dropped him, um, and that was because he was able to kick at range and use his long reach to his advantage. You know, I was worried for Joshua Van in that fight because not necessarily because he couldn't stylistically. I mean, the style was there. Obviously, that's the point I'm making here. But it was more than the style. It was also a short notice thing, and Edgar Chairez had a long camp, and it was like the UFC 306 Mexico card. So you know he had a lot of um, he had a like the fan base or the crowd or the arena on his side there. So yeah, it was like not a lot of not a lot of that fight was in his favor. Joshua Van only had the skill, and he used that to his advantage, but it didn't. Um, it didn't like the skill wasn't um, making up for the reach at moments, and that's quite worrying for certain longer rangier fights that he might have to go into later on in his career, and against Cody Durden, like he is longer, he is a little bit rangier, but Cody Durden's more of a like a boxer, and he was mixing things up with kicks and takedowns and stuff like that in the Bruno Silva fight, which he eventually got KO'd in. But even in the Machinel fight, I believe that was a submission. Let me check that. Ninja choke, yeah. Even in a like he is a very well-rounded flyweight, Cody Durden, but I don't think it'll be enough. I think Joshua Van, the grappling, the jiu-jitsu, all that, the wrestling, it's not gonna work on Joshua Van. He's just too good of a like tight, compact boxer. Um, and I don't think Cody Durden has the reach or the height to make the difference. So I think Joshua Van's a little more skilled in everywhere except maybe the jiu-jitsu. So I'm gonna go with a decision. First decision, I believe, on the card. Yeah. Yep. I think this is gonna be a sick card. I truly believe it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Chris Eidman is back. He pulled out on the fight card. Um, the last one, not the last one, but the last pay-per-view, and he's going up against Eric Anders. Now, the same thoughts on this one as I did in that one. I still think that he's going to be like an extra month or 2 weeks or whatever. I don't think that's gonna make him all of a sudden out of his prime. Maybe if it was like a couple months or so, maybe I would have a little bit of a consideration here. But ever so slight underdog, I quite like that. And Chris Weidman, his boxing, like I said before, his boxing looked good against Bruno Silva, and that's quite impressive because at that time Bruno Silva was considered decent. Um, and I've seen a few people switching their picks here. Lucas Tracy in particular. I don't know if he picked Chris Eidman in the 309 one. I think he did, which is why I'm saying that I believe he switched his pick, but I'm not fully sure on that. Ultimately, he has the reach advantage and the height advantage, and he even has the grappling that he can go to in his back pocket. But Chris Weidman, he has been using his boxing, so and even kicks, he's been doing a little better lately. So, yeah, I mean, Eric Anders, he's well rounded, I suppose, but he's a bit of an NPC in the middleweight division. So I'm gonna go with a decision here for Chris Eidman. And hey, old gloves, he could eye poke. Chris Eidman, it's his classic tool. Brian Battle and Randy Brown. I mean, I'm gonna go with a TKO here. Maybe even a KO. We've seen that, even against, I believe, Vicente Luque, way back in the day, Randy Brown got KO'd. Yeah, Randy Brown got KO'd by Vicente Luque, I'm pretty sure. And Brian Battle, he's been on a roll. He practically won the Angelusa fight, and you know, if you count that as a win, he's been on a, which you should because he was perfect. Angelusa was perfectly fine with, um, he was perfectly fine with pretending like he got an eye poke, but then after the fight, then he acted like he was ready to fight again when Brian Battle was calling him out on that nonsense. And he Brian Battle, like, my point there is 4 fight win streak if you count that because he was winning both the rounds in my eyes, and he should have gotten the decision there because it wasn't that bad of an eye poke. Um, I think it was stopped for an eye poke. Let me just double check that. Yeah. And reach advantage, I mean, sure, and height advantage, sure, Randy Brown, but honestly, I bet that it's going to be so minuscule that it won't even matter on come the fight. And Brian Battle has had if you count that no contest, Brian Battle has had a little more momentum because people still remember in their minds the Randy Brown that got stiffened almost by uh, JDM, and if it weren't for the submission attempt from, well, not an attempt, he got it, but if it weren't for the submission from JDM, which was there, he could have just TKO'd Randy Brown, and that was one punch that JDM landed. He just exploded into the range, and Randy Brown went down. It was crazy. It's just like, I mean, it could be a sign of JDM's power, but or technique. It could be that as well. But Brian Battle, I mean, I don't think that's a good look against Brian Battle, who has been showing really good hands in his recent fights, and even before his no contest against AJ Fletcher, like he's shown grappling even like in the first round, I believe he got dropped, and then in the second round he was able to implement his grappling to survive, and so I think that he has that in his back pocket. I think if anyone's going to use their grappling to their advantage, it would be Brian Battle. So ultimately, I'm picking Brian Battle here because I think that the range and the height is and the sort of rangy kickboxing from Randy Brown isn't going to be enough here. Like he was squeaking out a 29-28 against was it Dos Santos? Leski Zaleski or Alessio Zaleski. Some of these names. I don't know what's with me today. I'm just forgetting the names. Um, Alessio Zaleski, he was squeaking out a decision to a 5-11 Alessio Zaleski. Um, and that's like, you know, that guy is older. It's debatable whether he's even in his prime at this point. So that's not a great look. And Muslim Salikov, I think that Muslim Salikov's good still, but I think he has a chin issue, and I don't think that Randy Brown has that much power. So ultimately, I'm going to say that Randy Brown and Brian Battle go to a similar fight that Brian Battle had against Kevin Jousset. I'm going to say, do I say round 2 TKO? I'm going to say late round 1 KO. Late round 1. And moving on, we have Aljamain Sterling. See, this is such a good card that this is on the prelims. I know it should be on the main card, and the fact that Nate Landwehr, Doo Ho Choi, and um, Gracie and Bryce Mitchell are. I know that it's a disgrace that those are on the main card and that this is on the prelims, but I mean, even still, even if you reverse the order, this has still got so many good fights, so many interesting fights, so much ranked fights. This is crazy good. And Movsar Evloev, like Lucas Tracy and certain others like uh MMA Joey, I believe, they were saying that Diego Lopez got um was getting pieced up and dominated in certain scenarios against Movsar Evloev. But I've seen others like MMA Shea, and they point out very rightfully that these submission attempts from Diego Lopez should trump certain moments that Movsar Evloev had on the feet. But that's besides the point. The point is Movsar Evloev's striking is crisp, and he's shown it against Arnold Allen and Aljamain Sterling. Like, yeah, he got the win every single round on Calvin Kattar, but to me that looked like a Calvin Kattar that never really recovered from the knee injury from his fight against Arnold Allen, and I don't like that. I don't like that Aljamain Sterling. If Aljamain Sterling was like able to just piece him up and 30-26 instead of 30-27, like he got a back take like against Piotr Jan, but was even more dominant. Like if he was dominant, really dominant, then I would be like, okay, maybe Movsar Evloev could get his back taken and lose rounds on that. But I don't know, man. I think that the thing is here why I'm picking Movsar by decision, which yeah, I'm picking him by decision here, but let me explain the reason why. Okay, I see ultimately. I see the takedowns from Aljamain Sterling getting mostly stuffed, and then he has to deal with a decent striker who was actually competitive with Arnold Allen, who I view as a pretty good striker. Okay, fast twitch, decent kicks, really good entries into the pocket, nice jab, even flurries, speed, all that. Endurance, even he showed against Max Holloway. He was able to keep a 5 round pace. I'm talking about Arnold Allen. Um, and, I see that as like compared to Calvin Kattar, who is on the decline, we see that, and he has a knee injury. So it's like, was he really at his best shape? Was he really fully recovered, truthfully? Did he just never even mentally, as well, we gotta consider, did he never mentally recover from that knee injury? He was just like, okay, I'll accept these takedowns so long as, you know, I'm not getting, I'm not getting my injuries, I'm not getting any part of me injured. Maybe he was thinking in that aspect. And sure, Aljamain Sterling has had some, aside from the Sean O'Malley fight, he has had a great career. But these are against smaller guys with, always a reach disadvantage. Kelvin Kidder was the only one who was comparable, and, he was taller and he was more of a featherweight than Aljamain Sterling in that fight, sure. But this is like a real featherweight who has been a featherweight for quite some time. In fact, possibly his whole career. He could have been a bantamweight before, but Movsar Evloev, as a featherweight in his last 5 fights has been looking crazy good. I mean, Dan Ige, like, say what you want about Dan Ige, but he has some really good takedown defense, and he was taking him down pretty easily at moments. And, like Arnold Allen, Diego Lopez, and then Dan Ige, right? And sure, it kind of falls off from there, but these are real ranked opposition, and this is like featherweights that he is facing, while Aljamain Sterling, for the most part, is having his way with these bantamweights. So yeah, I just feel like most of his takedown attempts are going to get stuffed, and Aljamain Sterling is not nearly the striker that, or maybe I said Movsar. Aljamain isn't nearly the striker that Movsar is. So yeah, I don't. And if Evlev wants, he could probably try a takedown, see how it goes. Though I think he's gonna try and keep it on the feet. Kind of like a Magomed Ankalaev, Alexander Rakic type of situation, except a little more dominant. So yeah, interesting fight though. Now Tambo Garimbo and Vicente Luque. I think Vicente Luque is a really good underdog here. I really do. And I hate to constantly pick everything that the Tapology fans are picking. I hate to be like a sheep. But I think that Tembo Garimbo, this is his time. This is his chance. I'm gonna go with a decision. Okay. Now we see that in Vicente Luque's fight against Joaquin Buckley, and I know that this is Joaquin Buckley. He's looking great lately, but we see against Joaquin Buckley that he kind of just fell over when Joaquin Buckley put pressure on, and he kind of just ended up on bottom without, Joaquin Buckley needing to rock him or anything. He just kind of pushed him down, and that's not a great look. Like Vicente Luque, even though he's only 33, he's not been looking great. And Vicente Luque, I do think that he could beat certain unranked guys, but Demba Garimbo, like, he has momentum coming into this. He has really decent grappling. I think that this one's going to be one of the more boring fights on the card. I think that on damage, maybe it's going to be a controversy. Vicente Luque could have won on damage, right? But I think Tembo Garimbo is going to sort of win the cage fight. He's going to sort of stall on the cage at moments. He's going to keep it at his pace. He's going to secure some takedowns, but ultimately it's going to be some cage control, and people aren't going to be happy with it. But I think that Dembo Garimbo he's pretty good grappling wise, and he does have some power. We saw against Pete Rodriguez, and obviously his other fights have been pretty, like against Ramiz Brahmaj, pretty boring, and Nico Price not the most entertaining, but hey, it's the style that will get you into the top 15 or against certain guys who are on the decline. Vicente Luque, maybe in his prime, that would be a different story. But against guys like I can even see the Themba Grimbo style work on Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal's not necessarily on the decline in the same way, but these older sort of guys who've been around in the rankings for a little while. I could see Themba Grimbo implementing his grappling, and Vicente Luque I would see as one of the easier older sort of rankings veterans that Themba Grimbo can implement this game plan on. And I think that because of that fact, I think that this will be a pretty smooth sailing fight for Themba Grimbo. I'm going to say, hey, listen, on damage, there could be an argument, and I think that people will say that Vicente Luque could have had a on damage a win here, but I think that Tembo Grimbo's grappling is too he's too big, too strong, and too skilled in the grappling. He's able to keep you down. He's able to secure some good top pressure, decent punches, decent ground and pound. Not nothing special, but enough to get you in the top 15 in welterweight. And geez, I'm yapping a lot. I got to get through the card. I mean, I'm only around halfway, if even that. Anthony Smith, on paper, the GOAT. This is why he is in the thumbnail. This is why, because he is the GOAT. He is going to make this card the greatest of the year. Because Dominic Reyes is going to get the KO on him. That's why. That's why. Because Dominic Reyes is the GOAT. He's one of my favorites. Top 15 fighters to watch lately. I mean, even if he's losing, he's getting knocked out. I mean, look, I love Dominic Reyes, but he's definitely got some defensive holes. But Anthony Smith isn't the guy to exploit that. And he has like good jujitsu. He has good guillotines, most especially. But I don't think Dominic Reyes is going to give him his neck. I don't, and I don't see unless he's just got some fight IQ holes that he's not patched up. I don't see why Dominic Reyes would shoot a takedown here. And he hasn't for some time, if at all. I don't recall a moment where he's taken a fighter down in his UFC career, to be honest. Um, though I don't know if it was Yuri or not. I think it was Yuri, but I think one of them in the Yuri versus Reyes fight did take the other down. I think it was Yuri though, but that's besides the point. Um, yeah, I think 36 as well to 34. Anthony Smith kind of just huddled up on the ground to like a ball position. He just huddled into a ball, accepting punishment against Roman Dolidze at certain moments, and that's not a great look. I think round one KO, beautiful counters. I think that Anthony Smith will huddle up in a ball. He'll realize, hey, I got to retire soon. It's just this isn't it for me. It's I've been on the commentary desk more lately, and it's just I don't think he has the countering. I don't think he has the striking. I don't think that he has the power that Ryan Spann has to take Dominic Reyes down with a jab. So yeah, Anthony Smith, he's okay, but I think he's on the decline. I do. So round one, KO. Dooho Choi, Nate Landwehr. Let me just take a look at Dooho Choi because you know, yeah, I remember that he has had some good opposition. I remember that Kyle Nelson, Bill Aljo, Jeremy Stevens, like these guys are decent. Um, and Nate Landwehr, right? He's got some good opposition as well, but lately it's been like these guys that are like top 30, top 40. Aside from Dan Ige, whom he mostly was losing um because of his like Dan Ige, like his power. Um it was just too much in the early rounds, and um yeah, I think that this is a really competitive fight. Ah man. Dooho Choi though, he is younger. Oh man. Oh, this one's actually a hard one for me to pick. I could totally see Nate Landwehr winning this because ultimately that's what the UFC wants in this card. Um, Putting this on the main card, Nate Landwehr being an American, um, they want the American crowd to cheer for that. The Nate Train, baby. I think I still have a job. Um, I think I still got a job in the UFC, baby. Nate the Train. Yeah, but see, Dooho Choi is losing to good opposition though, like Bill Aljo, left hook actually, and Bill Aljo, yes, he lost to Kyle Nelson, but you know, I think that Dooho Choi did it a little more impressively, arguably. Carl, Charles Jourdain KO though, I don't like that, and Jeremy Stevens. When Jeremy Stevens KOs you though, it's nasty. So And Cub Swanson 7 years ago, I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm gonna go with Nate. I want to pick an underdog. I want to go against the Tapology fans as well. But I don't want to feel like an NPC here. I don't want to just regurgitate opinions, but I don't think that Doo Ho Choi is as good. I just don't. And more than anything, even if he is better, like I don't think that he has the chin. I don't think he has a better chin than Jamal Emmers. Like Jamal Emmers, like uppercut, not great chin, but I don't know if Doo Ho Choi has any better. Um, this one is hard. This one's generally hard to pick. I'm gonna go with a KO, I think. Landwehr KO, I think. Mm, I'm gonna go with around 3 TKO. That's a tough one. That's a real tough one to pick. I could see a decision. I could see it going either way. Decision as well. Thank goodness we have an easier one to pick here. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why, like, they're doing this either. I think there's only two good things that could come from this. The only two reasonable things that the UFC sees coming from this that would be interesting. They'll see one, Bryce Mitchell wins uh, by a pretty clear decision, or some other, who knows, maybe a KO or submission, probably not, but they see that, and they see that the American fans will cheer, and he'll have a good moment on the mic, and it'll be like, oh wow, he maybe is back. Who knows, Bryce Mitchell, you know, who knows, he could make a resurgence, something like that. And I could see also maybe a Kron Gracie, very unlikely, but I could see a Kron Gracie um, out of nowhere submission, and then people will be like, "Oh, Bryce Mitchell exposed," which that would be quite exposing, let's be honest. But my point stands. I think that that's what they're looking for in this fight. They're looking for either a return to form for Bryce Mitchell, a layup in the American crowd because they'll like it because they like Bryce Mitchell, or it'll be a big upset moment for Kron Gracie, and boom, he's actually a contender all of a sudden. Um, but I mean, let's be honest. Bryce Mitchell, he's got good top pressure, even striking. He has miles better. I mean, he dropped Edson Barboza for crying out loud. Even Lauren Murphy couldn't have done that. So, I mean, Bryce Mitchell, like he's got a decent striking, especially compared to Kron Gracie. And I mean, Kron Gracie's gonna just butt scoot. So I don't really see this being much different than the Charles Jourdain fight for Kron Gracie. And then Cyril Gahn versus Alexander Volkov too. I would have picked Volkov if he didn't have an injury. It's also kind of similar in that sense with Aljamain Sterling because Aljamain Sterling, even though he doesn't have the striking necessarily, he could grapple his way possibly through better jujitsu to win possibly 29-28. But similar with Volkov. I don't know if he's going to kick as well. I don't know because he also has grappling. We've saw it against Tai Tuivasa, but I don't know if he's going to work it too well. The grappling on Cyril Gahn if he tries it, knowing that he has an injury, knowing that he doesn't want to break anything, because it's a psychological thing with people when they have injuries as well. That's the same thing I mentioned with the Calvin Kattar fight for Aljamain Sterling. Like that couldn't have been the prime Calvin Kattar. I mean, Calvin Kattar looked pretty good against Josh Emmett, and then Josh Emmett goes on to look good against Bryce Mitchell, though that was a week notice for Bryce Mitchell, I think, maybe 2 weeks, but I'm getting sidetracked. Cyril Gahn, he is pretty much just better in most departments. Yes, he does have the height disadvantage, and that's always going to be hard for him to find the range, find the openings on a larger guy. Larger guys. MMA Shay, he does have a really good analysis on this point that tall opponents are harder than rangy opponents as far as their arm length is concerned because the taller opponent can just sort of lean back a little bit and then all of a sudden your perception of the range amongst the two fighters, your perception has completely changed, and it's I don't know if I'm explaining it too well, but it's certainly a little bit more effective. Having height, I do think that the overall better kickboxer, and I do think that these are the two best kickboxers, except maybe you could say Tom Aspinall is a little better than Volkov. We don't know that though, because yes, he did look decent on the feet against Volkov, but he finished it with a takedown and then a submission. So ultimately, I think that from what we've seen, I do think that these are the two best kickboxers, but uh, I think that Cyril is always just a little better. I think that the first fight was more close than what the scorecards led on to believe. However, I still think that Cyril Gane's probably going to win by a 29-28. I really do. And Volkov can implement the grappling, but I don't know. I think that even if he's working with Olenek, the guy that had a ton of submissions and he had a ton of wins not just in the UFC but in MMA, he had like 61 wins. Alexei Olenek. Even if he works with him for this fight, I don't know. I feel like Cyril Gane is overall just a little bit better in every department except for the grappling. And I think that Cyril Gane's takedown defense will be just enough. Where even if he gets taken down, I think that he's gonna get right back up. Now, Volkov though he did get an Ezekiel choke. Uh, Ezekiel? Yeah, Ezekiel. I think I said it right the first time on Tuivasa, which is really good. And so I do think that he does have jiu-jitsu advantage as well. But again, I don't know if he'll be able to get to muscle Cyril Gane down the same way John does, like John Jones. I don't know. I think he could potentially, but am I gonna bet? Not bet, but predict overall that that's more likely than Cyril Gane just schooling Volkov on the feet, where Volkov's bread and butter is kickboxing? I don't think so. So I'm gonna give it a decision to Gane. Interesting fight though. And Ian Machado Gary versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. Finally an underdog that I will pick. I will take this to the night of the fight, okay? Ian Cuckchato Gary, he is, but he's gonna win. Ian Cuckchato Gary is gonna win. It doesn't matter how much of a cuck he is. It doesn't matter if he blocks all the comments on his socials and he starts to be all humble and starts to trash talk less and he just doesn't you don't hear from him on social medias because now he knows that whenever he opens his mouth people are going to critique him and he's going to stumble over his words and he's going to have a voice crack like he did on his last press conference, numbered pay-per-view press conference. We know that he is soy now. We know that. We know that he's on the vegan diet, and like what Lucas Tracy said, he's probably going to be less fit than he was last time, but the skills are there. And aside from the fact that he has some T-Rex arms for his height and his stature and his weight class, despite his T-Rex arms, he's still going to do really nice work on the feet against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I truly believe that. I think this is going to be a 48-47 for Ian Gary. I truly believe it. And Ian can implement grappling as well. He doesn't need to take down Shavkat. He just needs to hold him enough, I feel. Because, yes, Shavkat is deadly, 100%, but Ian's working with Charles Oliveira. He's working in his gym. He's working with some great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. And people are forgetting that. And Shavkat is 30, while Ian is still getting better at 27. I truly believe that at 30 to 33 is when people stop getting better. Shavkat is still 30, so he could be getting a little better. He could have a little bit more room for improvement, but I think Ian still has much more room for improvement, and you see that against MVP. You see every single fight he's getting better. Whereas Shavkat, he's coming off of an injury. Ian fought more recently at UFC 303. Um, Although actually no, Ian, I'm gonna give him credit here. He actually didn't look like he was trembling much against in that press conference, but in The one against Jeff Neal, I think that was 298. He actually did kind of look like he was kind of stumbling and he was kind of voice cracking. His voice just didn't look like it didn't hear sound like it had much conviction. And I know that's ironic coming from me because I'm not um, the greatest talker, but when you're on the big stage, you're expected to talk quite well, and especially if you're gonna name yourself the future, as well as being a prospect whom you inspire, take inspiration from McGregor. So he was very well spoken on the mic. So it's just the standards for him is not quite meeting expectations, and as opposed to someone like me who's obviously I'm not expecting to live up to a Conor McGregor, at least on the mic. And yeah, it's just I think that he's much better on striking. Shavkat Rakhmonov, when he's aggressive, he can really hurt Ian, and I think that he'll drop Ian in this fight. But I think that Ian's jiu-jitsu is going to allow him to survive. I think Shavkat's going to try something like what Islam Makhachev did to Charles Oliveira, but Ian will have the chin and the durability and the awareness in that moment, and he's gonna survive getting dropped in that round. I think that round where he gets dropped will be a clear Shavkat round just based on that, but I don't think that he, aside from moments where he tests the chin of Ian, I don't think it'll I don't think he'll win rounds off of being more technical, except for if he takes down Ian. And even if he does, he'll have to worry about the grappling. Because against, I understand that this is MVP, but against MVP, he got the body triangle, he got the back pretty freaking easy, and he was against in my opinion, a much faster guy in MVP. He was even landing a few moments in the stand up. He was landing just enough to where the judges saw that and said, "Okay, we can give one or two of the rounds as well as the control that he had on the back, because Ian Gary is a point fighter. That's what he is, and he will stay that way, and he will secure a win that way. 48-47, and I am gonna be laughing to the bank when Ian gets this done, and all these other MMA YouTubers are gonna be saying, I think that Ian Gary has really good striking, but it's not gonna be enough. He's just too soy for Shavkat. And yes, he is, but he's he's just a good striker, and he's gonna have the takedown defense enough. He's gonna have the overall well-roundedness, and it doesn't matter how you act outside of the cage. It doesn't matter how soy you are outside the cage. It's the skills. The skills pay the bills. I know that's an old saying and it's repetitive and people have said that a million times, but the skills pay the bills. It's the truth. And it's going to stay that way with this fight. And last but not least, the main event. The main event. Oh, let's go. Now, Kaya Sakura, I'm sure he's great. And he's definitely going to have a huge advantage being bantamweight coming down, in my opinion. Okay? I think that there's some people who cut down in the big fights that show, oh, okay, well, wait a minute. Actually, cutting down and weight draining yourself that much is going to make you lose a lot of strength, and then they're just going to get taken down and smashed. I think some people have that problem, but I think Kaya Sakura is actually going to play a. I think the takedown defense is going to be good for Kaya Sakura because of the weight cut, because he's coming down from a bigger weight class. But I think that in the championship rounds, it's going to be a problem for him. I think that he's going to clearly outstrike Alejandro Pantoja in moments, and I do think that he certainly can win this. But Alejandro Pantoja, I think he is going to become second best flyweight of all time with this one, and I think that he's people are going to start talking about him like he's DJ, because in this era of MMA, it's quality over quantity, and I think that Alejandro Pantoja, his jiu-jitsu and his takedowns are going to be too much. We saw that against Alex Perez. I mean, he just rushed him. It didn't matter that his not defense, offense was sloppy. It didn't matter that he was just bum rushing. It didn't matter that he was just swinging wildly. He managed to get the back off of just being aggressive over Alex Perez, and Kaya Sakura is going to show a really good showing for himself, similar to Steve Erceg. But I think that even if he lands a knee, which MMA Guru is predicting that it's possible that he could illegally knee Alejandro Pantoja in some fashion, thinking that it's a legal one because of the fact that they modified the rules a little bit for the knees. I think that he I don't think that that's gonna play in his favor, though. I think that Alejandro Pantoja could win off of that, actually, because MMA Guru is saying that Kaya Sakura. I think he was saying that Kaya Sakura could win off of that. I don't actually think so. I think that if anyone would win in that scenario, it would be Alejandro Pantoja. Now he might be honorable and say, okay, like Anthony the goat is making it really hard for me to even say his name. I mean, I, I can't on paper say his name. I mean, on paper, his name is just too tough. Anthony Smith. He was honorable with the knee that he took from John Jones on the ground, and he was willing to continue. And I feel like Alejandro Pantoja could potentially do that as well. He could continue because he's a pretty honorable guy by the looks of with the way that he speaks in his interviews, and like even after his first title defense against Brendan Royval, he was like, "You proud of me now, Dad?" or something like that. He was like he seems to be like an honor first type of guy, and um, I don't know if he would accept that illegal knee, uh, and then accept it as a DQ win, but. Either way, if that happens, I don't think it would favor Kaya Sakura unless he's honorable, Alejandro Pantoja, and he doesn't take too much time as a breather, and he ends up getting 2 days to recover. That could happen, but look, Kaya Sakura, he's definitely going to be the longer, taller, rangier guy. He's definitely going to have a pretty good takedown defense. I think he's going to look great in this fight, and he's going to prove why he deserves this immediate title shot. I really do. I think that this is going to be an exciting, insane main event, and it's really going to put a spotlight on the flyweights, especially since it's an American arena, an American crowd. And I think that this is going to be an insane fight, and there's going to be a lot of knees landed, which are going to destroy the gas tank of Alejandro Pantoja. Kaya Sakura is going to land them onto the body. We know that he's landed a few on the head, which resulted in a KO for him multiple times in Ryzen. And I think that it's going to certainly play a factor here. The knees are definitely a great weapon against Alejandro Pantoja for Kaya Sakura, but in the hands he's just decent. I feel like he's not as good as Steve Erceg, and yeah, Steve Erceg lost to not Kaya Sakura, different Kai Kara France. And but that was just because Steve Erceg, let's be honest, he's a little too calm, relaxed, slow. He's not very fast twitch. He could be the best striker in the world, but he's just kind of not fast twitch. He's kind of lackadaisy, lazy. Um, he's just kind of he's too technical for his own good. He's a bit of a Corey Sandhagen in that aspect. And I think that Kaya Sakura, he's more lethal, he's more aggressive. So if you're picking Kaya Sakura, definitely pick him by KO, which 21% um, of people are picking as Sakura, and most of them, as you could see, 73% KO. But I do think he's a really good underdog as well, but I've already picked a pretty risky underdog in Ian Gary, and I think that Alejandro Pantoja is gonna end up showing levels in this fight. And I'm gonna say in the championship rounds, he really shows Kaya Sakura his jujitsu. I think that Kaya Sakura could be training with all the greatest jujitsu practitioners, but it's not gonna be enough for the cannibal. I mean, what a nickname as well. And yeah, I mean, Kaya Sakura. I actually hope he wins. That would reignite this division in a way we've not seen before. It would make it hype again, but I don't see it. I just the only way is a knee. Um, maybe if he lands an illegal knee and they somehow give it to him because Alejandro Pantoja is clearly faking and they can tell, or potentially, which I don't see that happening. I think that I think he's too proud and he's got too much of an ego for that type of a way of losing. Or maybe Kaya Sakura, it just shows levels and maybe the knees will land like a flying knee or maybe on a takedown entry, and it won't be a silly DQ loss type of situation. Maybe it will be an actual real KO with a knee. But I don't know. I think that his hands are pretty good, but I don't see it from my hands. Everybody's talking about the knees, and that's really all that he can find on Alejandro Pantoja in this fight, I think. I don't see him knocking him out with maybe an uppercut, but I've not seen him land much uppercuts in his career. I've seen mostly straight shots, which are good, but I don't think that that those jabs or those crosses or those left hook, right hook, I don't think those are going to be lethal enough. I think we know what his best weapons are, and those are the knees. So I don't think that he'll land them, but I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? I mean, this is MMA, but this is my thoughts on the fight. I'm going with Asakura. I mean, Asakura. I'm going with Pantoja. Yeah, and great stuff. Great night of fights. I can't wait for it. Lots of lesser known promotions in the lead up to this banger of a card. And yeah, I mean, if you liked my predictions or my personality or anything on this channel, let me know. Comment, like, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on this card. Is it overrated? Is it underrated? Is Anthony Smith on paper? Is Anthony Smith on paper the GOAT? Okay, he's a Lionheart for a reason, because he is the king. He is the king lion of paper. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, he is on paper the Lionheart, the GOAT. He is Bogdan Guskov on paper. And without any further explanation and any further bullshit dialogue, bullshit explanation, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to have a good one.